if being, or God, is the creative source of all energy and thoughts from the ego are a negative form of energy, don't these negative thoughts originate from being? In other words, did God create evil? So let's just look at it again. If being, or God, is the creative source of all energy, there's only one source, right? And that is the creative source of all energy. Thoughts from the ego are a negative form of energy, but energy, of course. Don't these negative thoughts originate from being? And so, did God create evil? That question, of course, has been similar. That kind of question has been asked and talked about by many philosophers. And it has remained a kind of stumbling block in Christian religion. So let's see what the intuitive answer is. In this sense-perceived universe, if you want to use anything here to compare God to, the most appropriate thing in this sense-perceived universe would be the sun, because the sun is the source of seemingly inexhaustible energy and the giver of life. The very heat in your body is comes from the sun indirectly. The sun, of course, is not eternal, but compared to the human lifespan, it can be considered as virtually eternal. It's so much vaster. And it gives freely of itself millions and millions of years of just pouring out energy. Now let's say the sun is in a process of becoming conscious of itself. Because my intuition is that the universe, or rather that which underlies the universe, or the one behind the many, is in the process of becoming conscious of itself in time, the dimension of time. Although the one also exists in the timeless dimension, where There is no past and future. So God, to use that word for a while, in the timeless, God is already complete and perfect. But it seems that in the realm of time, God is becoming conscious through all these life forms. Now, if that were the sun, then in the process of becoming conscious, let us say that light particles, if there is such a thing, well, there is, it's called photons. Well, they're not really particles, but nobody knows what they are, waves or particles or both. In the process of becoming conscious, the sun, which continuously emits zillions of photons, light particles. Let's say the individual photon, of course, is part of the process of becoming conscious for the sun. And in that process, the individual photon, of course, would undergo a change of consciousness, arising more consciousness. And temporarily, the individual photon, as it becomes together with the sun, it is part of the sun, it makes up conscious, as consciousness arises, it misperceives itself as a separate entity. And no longer, because it's becoming conscious, it no longer realizes its oneness with the sun. That there's a continuum, never really loses connection with the sun. And so temporarily, as part of the process of becoming conscious, it believes itself to be separate. It's a temporary thing. And while it believes itself to be separate, it creates all kinds of illusions that reflect the basic illusion of separateness. And that's basically where we are at, humanity is at, because humanity is the human being, is the photon, the sun particle, so to speak, not the intelligence within. The consciousness within is the consciousness of God. There's only one consciousness. And that consciousness, in the process of becoming, the whole becoming conscious, misperceives itself temporarily. And that creates the illusion of separateness in the individual human. And that creates the illusion of identification with form, which is the illusion of separateness. That's seeing oneself as a separate entity. And the stronger that illusion is, the more that gets reflected in its actions outside, which then become deluded. And that's called evil. Ultimately, in evil, nothing is destroyed. The essence of all life form is eternal. But on its own level, it's not pleasant. From the point of view of the larger whole, it's only a brief dream episode that takes place as the one is becoming conscious. So that is the answer to, did God create, or does God create evil? So the teachings that say that evil ultimately is not real, of course that is correct. but it's a question of levels. If you look at it on one level, it has a certain reality, and the fact that it ultimately is not real does not mean that on this temporary level it appears very real, but it must be recognized as deluded. So evil, I have defined it before somewhere, can be defined as complete identification with form. That is the illusion. And the more an entity is identified with form, the more seemingly evil the entity creates. And the more suffering is created. And what's the answer? The answer, of course, is why we're here. We are here, you, me, us, here, is the arising of the answer. And the answer is not just the answer, it's also the end of the illusion of separateness and the end of so-called evil.